Welcome back to the Arbitrage.Run show. I'm your host, Donkey Teeth, joined as always by Kevin from Arbitrage Racing. What's happening, Kevin?
What's up, Donkey? How we doing?
Doing great. You know, just another day on Novus Earth, right?
Aren't they all, right?
Kevin, we got a fun show planned this week. First off, we want to give away the horse that we talked about on last week's show, coming from Twin Twister and Django. And we did this raffle already from our YouTube subscribers, which, by the way, is not that easy to do. I didn't know. I wouldn't have wouldn't have done it through YouTube subscribers. But we gave it away, and the winner was somebody who's actually bought horses from us before. Anshul Puri, I believe is maybe how you pronounce the name. Soccer Stables.
Soccer Staples is easier to say.
Yeah, Soccer. We'll call them Soccer Stables. So, congrats, Soccer Stables, on your win. We'll send this horse over. I actually sent you a message on Twitter earlier, but we'll be doing these kind of giveaways, probably more surprise type stuff. Maybe, we talked about doing one last week and lost track of it when there was the cross conditional going, and we had a UUU cross sitting around, and we didn't do it, but we will do all that kind of stuff, and it'll probably just be on a whim, and we might just message one of our subscribers about it. There is a way to make your subscription on YouTube public. I can only see like 65 of our 200 subscribers right now, so unfortunately, some of you didn't actually get into the drawing. I hate to say it, but if you can figure out how to make your subscription public, I don't know how to do it, but apparently there's a way to do it, all right? So, Kevin, let's talk about some ZED news here. The big news, I guess, and not a big news week in ZED this week, but the big news yesterday was it seems like lending is maybe going to be coming out in the next day or two. I don't know why they would have framed it up as what? How did they phrase it, Kevin? They said
it wasn't soon; it was something else.
Within touching distance. Yeah, they're really getting creative on not using soon anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this was something that they didn't need to update. So why would they update and set themselves up if it wasn't imminent? So yeah, look for that. Hopefully later this week. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it feels like something that they would probably drop like Sunday night U.S. time, Monday morning Australia. That seems to be their cycle. But I saw some people, they released a guide, and it went kind of in depth on how it's going to work and the splits and all that. It's going to be a 50-50 split, very basic to start. And Facundo alluded to all of this in his AMA last week, that this is version 1. What are your thoughts on that? It seemed like there was a bit of negative response on how these breakdowns are going to work, and questioning whether borrowers are even going to utilize this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the complaints are warranted, right? I mean, it's a very high level minimum viable product of a lending system. It's very basic in terms of there's only one length you can do, the 4 days they described. It has to be 50-50. And I mean, quite frankly, it's not that advantageous to the borrower because they're taking all the risk, and there's some slight discrepancies and misalignment around you lend for 4 days, but you could be qualifying for a tournament and actually give the horse back as it expires. And then all the work you did, now there's a 24-hour delay and you don't get any of the benefit of that. So there's some things that need to be worked out, but I think it's important to remember this is really just a functional test of lending, making sure it can roll out. And they've been very clear in acknowledging the shortcomings of it and hopefully quick to implement 2.0 of this lending space. But I mean, it's still gonna be cool to see it, right? Like there's gonna be ZED token tied up, and just getting those licenses is gonna be cool to experience.
Yeah, it's something different. I guess I mean, I tend to have a little bit rosy colored outlook on everything ZED, so that's probably not a news to our listeners or our viewers. But I think that this, it leaves some to be desired. It actually said in the guide that regarding, like if you qualify a horse, and let's say we lent out a horse and the person qualified it, and it comes back to us before those tournament races run, that we would get those profits. And it kind of alluded to this will probably change, and we'll announce it before it changes. But it seems like it's just kind of programming issues. And I think that that's a lot of ZED's issues, is lack of development team, and they're spread too thin. And like all of this stuff is bleeding edge and takes forever. Like I have no idea what it takes to program this stuff. So it's probably along those lines that they don't want it to be like this, but it's they have to pick and choose what they're developing right now, right?
Yeah, I did like their vision, like what they laid out in terms of what's coming down the pipeline, the variable length and the being able to pick and choose who you're lending to. I think is interesting, and maybe most importantly, dialing up or down the rate you kick back to the borrower or the lender gets, because for someone to lend out a beast, it's going to have to be more going back to the owner than 50%, right? There's just not enough incentive if it's truly a printer to do it for that rate. So I think the more you see it shift and be customizable, you're going to see like, all right, does someone want 10% of profits on, I'm just saying like ready, set, boom, for maybe I'm out for a week and we can't run it, something like that. But I would never do 50% of ready, set, boom. I would just let you run it or something like that.
Right. And I think Facundo called it that 1.1. And yeah, I mean, I was kind of under the impression that it would be version 2 and it would we'd probably be stuck with this for a while. He made it sound like we wouldn't be. We'll see if that's true. But he does have, doesn't seem to overpromise typically. So I just wanted to say, Kevin, and we didn't even discuss this, but if somebody qualifies one of our horses, we're going to be lending out a bunch of horses. And I think they're going to be quality. If somebody qualifies one of ours and it comes back to us before the tournament runs, we'll send half of the winnings. And I hope other large stables would do the same, right? Like we're not hoping to cut anybody out that does the work and stuff.
Exactly. I think everybody's pretty aware of the shortcomings right now in the early stages of new products with ZED, and we're always trying to look out the best we can or kind of plug holes while ZED does it behind the scenes. So that's a good point. And it also sounds like once it expires, unless the owner pulls that horse back, it's going to reappear into the whatever they call it, the lending market. So you could always try to get it right back after it expires. I'm not sure how that works out, but we would definitely refund the 50%.
Right. And I think a lot of this is going to be I don't even know if ZED knows how that's going to work, right? We'll see. I think that's kind of the issue with a lot of this stuff is I don't know if it's been tested, but so yeah, the other comment that Roid Rager posted this and wanted transparency that like read everything here before you get into it, which is fair. But I think part of the context there of his post on Twitter was the expected value is not there to do paid racing with borrowed horses because the quality of horses. I mean, it would have to be a monster for you to put up 100% of the fee to only get 50%. Makes sense, but I think that's also like what we want to try to really get away from is everybody being so obsessed with expected value. If you can run $2 races and maybe break even, maybe make a little, maybe lose a little and have fun, then well, it's worth it to me. I mean, those are the people that we want to onboard and get into the game. So, this obsession with, it's a losing bet, sure. But if you're putting, whatever, $20 down for a few hours of fun, and we're going to be lending out some good horses that maybe you have a chance to make some money on, and you can run frees and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I try to put a positive spin on it. I think that there could be some good stuff here. We'll see how it works in practice, right?
Yep.
All right. We don't want to beat a dead digital horse here. So let's move on to some Twitter questions. Kevin, our first question, we got 2 this week. The first one is coming from our buddy Jake from Iceberg Racing. Let me pop it up here on the screen. So Jake wants to know, what do you guys do with premium foals that get bad rolls? Do you fire sell or keep and continue to breed? Any tips for small stables out there that take a risk on spending up big on premium foals when it does not pan out, as to how they can extract some value from their horses? So Kevin, as the head of breeding here at Arbitrage, I guess I'll take the first crack at this one and then kick it over to you for your thoughts. But for us, and again, I probably say this on every single show. First of all, not financial advice. Second of all, it really all depends on your goals with your stable. For us, we're not looking to, like, if we swing and miss and get this donkey out of a 2 ETH that we spend on a premium foal, or we spend 1.5 ETH on a stud fee, we're probably holding on to that. We're not in a position where we need to have this cash flow coming back in. Other stables might be, so again, it's not a one size fit all answer here, but I see a lot of breeding value typically in these breeds. Of course, a lot of it's going to come down to what is your definition of premium foal, or, are we talking about 2 of the best Z1s in the game, or are we talking about, breeding two really good legendaries together. I see a lot of breeding value in them, especially females, right? The males, again, is where it gets a little bit tricky. I think you and I were talking about this earlier today, this kind of strategy of if you can, I guess if it's glue, it's not really going to matter anyway, but you can sneak these through stud at the minimum and produce, especially if it's not Nakamoto, and you can get a lower minimum stud fee on a lower bloodline, which I guess maybe, I don't know if that qualifies as premium. It depends on who the parent was, right? But if you can sneak them through cheap and you can create some more lottery tickets for yourself from this really good ancestry that potentially maybe you're kicking out crosses or something like that could really dominate in those types of segmented racing. There's a lot of different angles you can go here. So I think there's value, and we also don't know that glue today is going to be glue tomorrow once we get this new class system and segmentation. We just don't know really what that's going to look like. So I personally am not looking to fire sell anything from really top tier blood, but that's my philosophy, and it comes from where we're at and what we're building, right, Kevin? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Jake asking this question, I can use one of his horses who probably fits this criteria somewhat. Peak a Boom is one of his mares, I believe, that came from Ready Set Boom and Rendezvous Peak. I mean, that's about as premium as it gets, and it's an okay runner. It's like a 10-14% winner, but nothing in paids. So clearly did not hit the upside it could have gotten with those parents, but it has had some phenomenal, like the family tree is super beneficial and very what am I thinking of? Profitable, I would say. Been a long day, but it had a kid. Ready to Peak is the name, and it bred with Hallelujah. So this is a direct offspring of Peekaboom, and that one in and of itself has made like 0.3 Ethereum, and then that had a kid that is one of the better tier 2 marathoners called Wild Peak. So this is just going way down the line of it can still miss the Peekaboom roll and get the Ready Set Boom or the Rendezvous Peak and bring you value if you have the resources to do those premium breeds from it down the line. So that's an example for Iceberg that he implemented and kind of answered his own question with.
Yeah, well, and I don't know that he was necessarily asking for himself, because he said small stables. He's not exactly a small stable over there, but
he's a man of the people, though.
Yes. No, your example there of is it Wild Peak? Was that the name? Thor's horse?
So good.
Yeah, and Thor, he reached out to me maybe a week ago, asking what I thought was a fair stud fee for this horse, and he's tanked it pretty hard, and he's a smart guy. He's optimizing his profit there in class 2, and it's under 15%. And I was like, well, if it was me, I would, keep it under 15%. Like, I mean, there's probably no way he's getting it above 15% now with how hard that he's tanked it. So he can sneak that through because it's not popping on Studmaster at the minimum, and either line up some deals off market, I guess you could say, with other people that want these studs and are willing to pay, whatever 0.1 on the side or something and take it at minimum, or he can breed in house and, for what is it, like 0.03 or something like that, he can kick out an offspring from just elite bloodline.
He's got Finny blood coming from Rendezvous. So yeah, that's a very cheap,
even cheaper. Yeah.
We like lotto tickets, and the 2.0 lotto ticket is that kind of ancestry roll, but this one doesn't even need it, right? This has got a bunch of gold throughout the whole family tree. So that is a good tip for Thor for sure.
Right. And so just to tie it back into this question of Jake's, like, yeah, if you come away with this Rendezvous was that was like the first offspring from Ready Set Boom.
This is Peekaboom. It's slightly better than Rendezvous, but not too much better.
So yeah, if you get one of those and it's just not a great racer, you think it's glue in the current class system, maybe it's not in the future one, but even then you can hit that ancestry lotto, and then it can still be exponential from one of those offspring down the line, like we're talking about with Wild.
Right.
Wild.
And one more comment here. Like, I understand some people that may be their investment in the game. They need to liquidate, but there should be a secondary market for these types of horses. And that's what's cool about ZED. There's a whole slew of stables that have different goals, right? And you could have someone like us who would be a buyer of this type of horse because we have the resources to invest in premium breeds, hoping to hit that lotto ticket and really do it justice in breeding it out. So it's not for everybody, but you would hope there's both sides seeing value in it, and you can kind of play your game.
Agreed. Okay, Kevin, next question here, and this one's going to be more for you as the racing guy. Again, coming from Jack. This is the second week in a row that Jack has had one of the most liked questions. So Jack Sunny Days, he wants to know if we think that any of the three racing funnels represent a better or worse opportunity than the others, and if so, why? If you had to pick one to attack from scratch via breeding or buying as an investment, again, this is not going to be financial advice, but which would you choose and why, Kevin?
Yeah, this is interesting. I think sprinters is probably the hardest in terms of there's just so many good ones, and they're all seem to be built for the tournament low variance lifestyle. Marathon is also difficult, but it's pretty predictable because you're so high on the distance preference spectrum when you're running 2600 that if you have DP, you're going to be having that consistent first through sixth run. So it's predictable, but with that, there's a very high cut line for both of these poles on the distance spectrum. So I would actually probably target mid. It's a little less predictable in terms of what you get with your offspring, but that's almost a good thing. That's why the cut lines are consistently the lowest among the three. You can sneak in variance easier to these types and have that chance of producing a nice high base, high variance type horse. So I think I'd probably go mid, just because the barrier of entry is easier due to the lack of consistency.
Well, and I kind of identified this like right at the start of this breeding update back in March, April, when it happened. Like, there's going to be an ebb and flow to everything, right? In any market. And distance preference has been valued so highly for good reason, right? Because it passes down so consistently. And those are the types of horses that have been profitable in the current class system with tanking and all that. But there had to be eventually an opportunity for these mid funnel horses, and I think that it's been growing and growing. And as people listen to this and maybe attack that opportunity, maybe it shifts back in the other direction. I think that that's kind of be the game is of adaptation and seeing where those opportunities are. But I guess to build on what you're saying too, from a breeding angle, it's easier to find matches for mids. They're cheaper. You see all of these good mid studs going in and everyone's looking for distance preference, and you can get a really good 1600 stud at the minimum pretty much any time. So yeah, I think from that kind of angle, and if you're buying a female breed, those are not as sought after.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants that marathon female because they're in such short supply, so they're more expensive. Right. And yeah, there's a lot of mids.
And they're more predictable, right? Like if you get that premium marathoner, they're always going to be more profitable than the same tier level of mid. It's just the way the distance preference works. You get more consistent output when they're running. That's the other thing we won't talk about today. But marathons have become so predictable that at the top, they don't really even run because people realize they're not positive EV in a lot of the races. So that's a separate conversation. But the unpredictability leads to cheaper prices, leads to an easier barrier of entry in the mid funnel. So that'd be where I would point to answer his question.
And I guess a little bit of a tangent here, Kevin, but do you think that in the new class system, there is a potential future where mids become more profitable than they historically have been?
It's tough because relatively speaking, so much relies on variance where it's just more of a random roll in each race. Like you can look at Third Head, who I would probably say is the best mid in the game, and its best weeks these days when you're going up against the best is like a 15% win rate. And your ROI coming off that in the new system where it's top six, you're probably looking at like a 40-50% ROI. Whereas if you have Ready Set Boom or Breathless and marathons, you can hit that thing and it'll go up above 100% ROI. So it's just more random stuff, and there's a reason why you see more volume in the mid because people realize and kind of feel that the ROI is much more evenly distributed, and you see more volume because of that. Because people don't mind gambling, but they don't want to be crazy with it.
So I guess, I mean, what you're saying, I guess the fix, if there is one, if there is an issue with the either end of the spectrum, is really we don't need to change mids, but if marathon could be more balanced and not so skewed to Ready Set Booms and Breathless Edges, then the game is more fair and there's going to be more racing volume, right?
Yeah, that answer is like 2200 is that. Like 2200 is the 1000 meter of the marathon preference, right? Like you have 1600 as the midpoint, you go 14, 18, 12, 2000, 1000, 22. And then we've expanded because in real horse racing it goes longer, but that's just pushing it even heavier on the DP. So you see the Breathless and Ready Set Boom do things that you would probably see a secret strategy or billions do at 600 meters, but that doesn't exist.
Yeah, makes sense. I think we've answered that question pretty well, Kevin. Let's dive in on a couple of horses that we are excited about, and we actually bred these already, and we don't have a lot to discuss as far as horses that we've bred for customers in this past week because everybody seems to be saving them for the upcoming maiden and the lucky maiden. By the way, if you've never done the lucky maiden, highly suggest you dive in there because it's a blast and there's some good payouts if you get lucky in there. But we bred Triumph for Terms for the first time, and I'm super excited about this one. We've actually got two that we bred from Triumph for Terms, and their crosses. These are just really fun bloodlines here, Kevin. Triumph for Terms, arguably the best elite, most consistent elite in the game. Up there, I guess on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Sprint Queen. Are there any others really in the conversation with Triumph for Terms and Sprint Queen that are 2.0 bred?
No, I was about to say John the Horse is up there, but that's a different type of breed. Not that I know of. I guess we'll find out tonight, right? With the elite tournament running.
Right. I love that about these conditionals too.
Yeah.
So this one's coming from Saber It Out, which is really a loaded bloodline here. Saber Trust, Grandeur figured it out. I'm excited to see this one. And then we bred one today, actually. And this was the first time that we bred Butterball. And Butterball is our exclusive colt coming from Two More Influence, who's the daughter of One More Influence, and Bellaranza. First time we bred Butterball, and we bred this one for a customer, Freedom Racing, I believe, on Twitter. And it is Fat Bird. So we charged 0.5 ETH. Oh, and we should again announce the price of Ethereum here. What is Ethereum at today? Like a little under, I want to say it's like 1850 today. So just for your reference, if you're watching this in the future, the price of Ethereum is around $1,850. The fee for this this breed of Butterball and Fat Bird was 0.5 ETH. Fat Bird is coming from Pound of Fat, and then Secret Strategy is over here on the other side. So again, pretty loaded bloodline. I like this price of 0.5. I think it's a pretty decent risk reward here. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this breed?
Yeah, I mean, the best compliment I can give is like, I think if I saw this, I would probably buy it for 0.5. Any less, we would have just kept it in house. I think the breakout was somewhat like 0.2 or so for Fat Bird, and then a little more for Butterball. But yeah, I think you're not going to find a better mix of blood with a proven 2.0 runner in Butterball. I mean, Butterball is a 15+% paid C1 runner, and then Fat Bird is kind of a Pound of Fat light with the strong, consistent sprinting performance.
We got a lot of requests for breeds with Butterball, and I mean, we're just really excited to explore what happens down these 2.0 lines when you breed them out well with all this aligned ancestry. So we're not excited to give them away, but we want to share too. So we bred this one, and we're excited to see that one run, hopefully in the Lucky Maiden. Kevin, we've got one recent success, and we just bred this one 2 days ago from Third Hedge. And Third Hedge is a hedge fund and Fifth Force offspring. Fifth Force is the third head Star Strider kid. So again, another just loaded bloodline here. The fee for this stud fee, they used their Westlake used their own mare, Z2 Legendary by the name of Neglect, who's pretty solid too. More of a variance horse, right? So this one was 0.2. And he kicked out a Z5 elite colt for them, and he's already got 25 races, and it's looking pretty good. It hasn't lost flames yet, huh, Kevin?
No, I mean, it's the classic, like what I was talking about with mid, right? This is going to be one that, depending on the scoring, it is going to do very well in these types of tournaments. I think they bred this for the elite tournament, and I think it qualified pretty highly. So he's already had some good profit on that, and we'll see what it can do tonight. But I like the chances of it flaming and doing well in some of those races just off of raw base ability coming from its ancestry.
Yeah, it's exciting when you haven't lost a flame yet. I mean, you'd like to see a little bit higher win rate and a little less second place, right? If it was a real monster, but it's looking pretty solid.
Yeah, I think this is a very solid outcome for paying 0.2 for that breed. And I mean, props to them. They reached out, had the pairing, and I think it was a good match for them.
And so, Kevin, you pretty much run this one exactly how they're running it.
I mean, yeah, based off the parents, you can pretty much figure out it's going to be that 1800 type. I think they've been experimenting elsewhere, but when you have a horse this strong in base ability, you're going to see flames in inferior fields pretty much across the spectrum. So as they start to push it up, I would expect the flames to peak out in that 1800 range.
Cool. And it's going to be fun to breed this one too. You're going to kick out some crosses, but just like with Triumph for Terms, I mean, those are going to be some of the most exciting crosses to run.
I go back and forth on this. Like a lot of times I see Colt as it comes out, and I was like, man, I want a filly just because they're easier to maintain. They last longer. But like when you're breeding down the line, you can have an elite colt you put them in nice and cheap before they get to 50 races or however you want to do it. But then you can throw like a legendary with it, a really like strong legendary, and just make a killer cross out of this thing. So you can be a little more scientific in stacking the top with the female side when you hit a colt like this.
Right. The bottleneck is like, just like with Triumph for Terms, it's like we don't want to waste those 12 not decayed breeds that we get on mares that aren't high quality. But then it's also like, oh, we've got these really good Z2 legendary marathoners. We don't want to use them with an elite. So it's a really tough equation to crack.
Yep.
All right, Kevin, we're going to get to keeping it real. So this one actually wasn't terrible. The fee was high. We really didn't want to give up this Verve female breed because Verve, if you're familiar, produced Vigor Fire, who's an absolute monster for Dan Shan. And then everybody knows Y2K. You know, he's the variant seems to be passing down. He's got some decent offspring, but no monsters yet. We kind of went over that on last week's show pretty well. But the fee for this offspring was 2 Ethereum. And the breakdown on that was 1.2 for Verve and 0.5 for this stud fee. I guess it was 1.75 was the stud fee that we put him in at. So 1.25 for Verve. Yeah, we wanted a lot for Verve. We really didn't want to give that up. And this buyer, ZC, kind of twisted our arm into doing it. It's not terrible, right? It's just not what you want to see for 2 ETH.
Yeah, I think this is one probably in that 1 to 1.25 range now. It'll make a little bit if it gets hot on the track. And then it's one you can keep breeding as a filly in this case, where you can keep breeding it, be strategic in who you snipe. And I mean, the Verve bloodline can produce some beasts, and then you would think at some point Y2K, if it hits that role, you're going to get a freak show as well. And I mean, it's very clear what this horse is, so you know exactly what you should do breeding it. Get one of those sprint types and see what happens. So a lot of upside in the breeding front, but some mystery there as well.
Let me ask you, is it clear what this horse is? Like, are you 100% sure that 1400 is where they should be running it and didn't get some ancestry pull?
It's got the variance very clearly, right? And it's got a really good win equity for this. So this is one actually, like if you lose flames, it's not at the end of the world. You can see a lot of its podium share is coming from that win slot. So it's not the end of the world if you lose flames. But anytime you go and look and you see, especially like when you get to 1400, you start seeing that you have the classic 1600 flame 12th. This is one of those that's going to do well at 1200. Will do well at 1000 too, but 1400 is where it's going to flame best, and maybe a little bit at 1600. So it's a variance horse with a little bit of distance preference.
And it's a filly, so there's some hope to be pulling Y2K and Verve. I remember when John Lee, I want to say he go on. Oh, he went on ZG's old Twitter Spaces and was talking about the breeding update, and he said something about when you're breeding down the line, you might be looking. I think the question he was addressing was actually from our buddy Jack from Good Boy, or now Bad Boy Racing, about horses getting lapped with this new breeding algorithm. This concern that like Y2K would suddenly be lapped by all of these horses with power creep and stuff like that. And John was saying that maybe at first, which isn't what has happened at all, but once you get down the line, you're going to be looking to breed and specifically try to isolate like one ancestor in the line. Makes me think that like you can pull like all of Y2K's genes into an offspring is kind of how I interpreted what he said. It was all very cryptic the way that he talked about things, but I think there's a lot that we don't know about this breeding 2.0 stuff.
Yeah, and this is one of those things I mentioned a couple weeks back around like when you're breeding this and breeding strategy, breed to like the pull you want to hit. At least is how I think of it at this point. And for that, you want the Y2K pull, you want the Verve pull. You could argue maybe you want the Verve parent pull with Confused Penguin being a really good 1600, but that's the type. So I would kind of picture what you want to come out and then find a match that if you hit that side on the female side, then you want a good partner for that role as well. So I would try to find a sprinter of some kind of variance and try to hit that Y2K or Verve roll.
And along the lines here, we're going to wrap up here in 1 minute, but this Triumph for Terms and Saber It Out breed kind of aligns with that idea that like there's just so much that we don't know about breeding 2.0, which is the whole time everyone was kind of freaking out about what everything they didn't like about it. It's like, wow, we're so early still. We don't know what this looks like after 12 months of breeding out these lines. And if you just continue to stack like two stable horses like this together, we don't know. Nobody's ever like really done a breed like this before with a Triumph for Terms and a Saber It Out to kick out and a cross like this. We just don't know what that's gonna turn into. So, and then what if we breed that with another cross that came from Triumph for Terms or an equally stable horse? I mean, these stable horses, they might stack up, and I know you don't believe that they're going to pass variance horses in the current system, but it's possible. We just don't know for sure.
Yeah, who knows? But John Lee was certainly confident that it would happen eventually. So
it seemed like it. Hey, Kevin, what was your valuation on the I wanted to try to wrap that into these shows a little bit more, because I think that's one of Kevin's got a lot of skills that make him the best at Zed, but your ability to value these horses roughly and accurately, like very quickly, is unparalleled, I think. So like this untrimmed hedges horse, where would you be valuing this like right now? And you and I talk about this, like your price to buy and sell is usually a pretty big gap. It's a big window that you're shooting at. So where would you be a buyer on this horse, and where would you be selling if somebody made you an offer?
I mean, once again, it depends on your like situation. If I had this horse and I paid 0.2, I think you're probably looking at probably an above average outcome. It looks like 0.75 would be a sell, and then if I were on the buy side, probably anything under half an Ethereum, I would think about it. So that's kind of my gap, but I think you could make back 0.5 in a couple cycles, right? That's the other thing with Colts. You get 3 offspring quick, so you've got potential to make the earnings back a lot faster than if they were a filly, as long as you have the matches on the female side.
Right, as long as you got the mares, or you can find somebody to give them to you at a reasonable price, right?
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think that is a wrap here, Kevin. Always a pleasure. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the show. Good luck out there in the maiden. Send us some breed requests. Our top tier options are probably booked here in the next week, but if you want a last minute maiden breed, like we can whip something together that, it's going to be a little bit of a crapshoot, but for 0.15 or 0.2 Ethereum, we can get something from good blood that's, got a chance to compete. So hit us up out there on Twitter or arbitrage.run preferably. And we'll be back next week, Kevin. Take it easy, brother.
All right. See ya.